So this whole good, evil thing is kind of interesting, and I sort of have thought about it kind of quite a lot, because it's a really simplistic kind of way of looking at things. I don't think that people are born good. I don't think that they are born evil. There's just people and their behavior. And when you kind of dig beneath it, there's a sort of graphic I've used a number of times called, I think I've referred to it as sort of the Freudian iceberg. So you've got an individual's results, which is driven by their behavior. That's the stuff that you see, right? But underneath the surface, underneath the iceberg, are the things that you don't see, which is how they think, how they feel, all of which is driven by a combination of their environment, the sort of the nurture, the kind of culture they grew up in, but also their nature, their kind of human nature, if you like. And all behavior is driven by those things. Now, it really depends on your kind of belief systems. For example, if you take a terrorist, or someone that we would call a terrorist, an Islamic fundamentalist, for example, a member of the Taliban, okay? They have an entirely different way of thinking about the world, an entirely different set of belief systems, a lot of which is driven around the fact that, you know, the afterlife is kind of a better place than the world in which they're currently living in. Now, I'm not seeking to judge that. That's kind of unhelpful. But if you understand that, you can see why they behave in a way that they do, okay? Why they interact like that. And equally in Afghanistan, this is a group of, you know, warring tribes and factions that have no concept of a centralized government. You know, you talk to them about, you know, Kabul, they're like, well, why do I care about Kabul? Like, that's totally irrelevant to me. That's a totally different sect or type kind of group. And what I found it easier to sort of think about, certainly if I think about Afghanistan, was don't think about it as geographically different. Think about it as a kind of almost time warp. That's probably not dissimilar to how Europe would have looked almost in the Middle Ages in terms of kind of its development. Warring tribes and factions that don't like each other, that occasionally club together to fight a common enemy if it sort of serves their interest. Those kind of that kind of way of thinking about it. And so this whole concept of sort of good and evil, I try and avoid thinking about it because I think, or not try and avoid thinking about it. I don't think it's helpful. I don't really think judgment in any kind of form is helpful. And the way I've kind of shifted my thinking over the last sort of few years is thinking about things in terms of, is it helpful? Is it useful? Does it help me live a better life? Or is it kind of unhelpful? And I think the moment that you sort of start to judge people, you stray into this territory of it being an unhelpful kind of way of thinking. Because the reality is, you don't know what's going on underneath the surface. You don't know what kind of pain or challenges or stories they've told themselves that is kind of shaping their behavior. I think I saw it really kind of resonated with me when I saw a sort of graphic that sort of talked about Star Wars, but kind of using a slightly different narrative, you know, which was something along the lines of, and I'm going to butcher this quote, but, you know, Luke Skywalker, an orphaned child who joins an ancient religious sect in a sort of, an ancient religious sect who goes on to commit a mass atrocity by blowing up this sort of, you know, this planet system. And you start to think about it and you go, hang on a sec, you know, Luke Skywalker going up against sort of this big, you know, highly resourced, dominant evil empire. You know, if you just sort of shift that narrative slightly and sort of think differently about it, could you see the US as an evil empire? Well, it kind of depends on where you sort of grew up. And again, not seeking to judge, you know, this is seeking to kind of understand those sort of different perspectives. And I think that, you know, if you're interested in kind of, you know, in evil and sort of understanding extremely bad, violent, unpleasant behavior, there's loads of science. There's loads of experiments that have been done on this that show that humans can very, very quickly behave in ways that traditionally they would have thought of absolutely kind of reprehensible. The Stanford Prison Experiment, is a sort of good example. There's a sort of variety of things there. And it kind of makes you realize that, hang on a sec, I like to think I'm really self-directed. But the reality is my role models, my environment, people's in positions of authority have a huge impact over my behavior. And I think all you can really do is sort of be aware of that and sort of guard against it and realize that there aren't good people and there aren't bad people. There's just people. And a lot of their behavior is shaped by how they think and the context and the environment they're facing. I think that is a more helpful way of thinking about it.